Well, good evening, everyone. As we see attendees who are still joining us. We are going to go ahead and get started. My name is Monica Negrilla. I'm the Human Services Manager here with the City of Issaquah. I am honored and privileged to be here tonight with our guests. And before we get started, I would also like to introduce you and thank our other staff members who've been instrumental in organizing this event, Marisol Visser and Hannah Roberts. Marisol, Hannah, and I will be your hosts tonight, so feel free to reach out in the chat if you have any questions, or if you would like to reach out to the panelists with questions, feel free to ask those in the chat or in the question and answer section. And so we would also like to encourage, if you make comments or questions, to make sure that those are positive. We would love to encourage you to treat everything that you hear tonight as an opportunity to learn and grow, and then to seek unity and understanding. And so with that, we are honored to begin Cultural Conversation series. This is the first in what we hope to be a long-lasting tradition of community conversations that will bring us together as a community. I have a quote that I would love to share with you. It's from Pat Waters. And she says that when we listen and celebrate what is both common and different, we become a wiser, more inclusive, and better organization. I would like to extend that quote to say a wiser, more inclusive, and better community. I know being in our community for the past almost 3 years, we are welcoming an inclusive community, but we also know that more work needs to be done. COVID-19 caused much disruption, pain, and isolation all around the world. But in addition to dealing with the pandemic, some communities have been facing more pain and more loss that goes beyond what many of us could imagine. Hate incidents against Asian and Pacific Islanders in the United States are continuing to skyrocket. Our Asian community has been facing an atrocious attack as hate crimes, threats, and mass shootings target and wrongfully blame people of Asian descent for the pandemic. So while tonight should be a joyful celebration of the rich and beautiful cultures that make up the Asian and heritage and Pacific heritage, and while we still hope that we are going to have part of that, we cannot remain blind or silent, and we can not call out and reaffirm that hate has no place in our community, and that we must do better and find unity in diversity and support one another. And with that, I would like to invite Marisol to lead us in a moment of silence for the victims of the hate crimes around our nation. Marisol.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marisol Caesar. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Before we start our event, I would like us to take a moment of silence and remember the fatal victims of Asian hate crime. Unfortunately, the list keeps growing and might not reflect all the people that has been experiencing hate crime every day. Let's take a moment and reflect on what we can do. What can I do? How can I be an ally when I witness something? Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Marisol, and thank you, everyone. And next, I would love to invite Mayor Mary Lou Polly to say a few words and present the proclamation she issued earlier this week honoring Asian Pacific Heritage Month. Mayor Polly, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me. I am honored to be here and to be able to read the proclamation for this panel. And also, I'd like to just share a few words first before I get into the proclamation. My family moved here to the USA in 1993, and I fell in love with my new town, which I never left, and my new homeland. I came down on an I-90 visa, I got a green card, and in 2008, I applied for and got my citizenship within this wonderful country. I was able to first vote in the 2008 elections. But 2016 through 2020 has been a real low point for me, more so than the heart-wrenching pain I felt during the Oklahoma bombing, during 9/11, which crushed my heart. The last 4 years of anti-immigrant rhetoric from the highest level of our government in the US has absolutely broken my soul. It has led to violence against our American immigrant family. I'm thankful for events like this. I'm thankful for the team that pulled this together and that we are able to spend this time celebrating our amazing Asian Pacific heritage in the US with events like this tonight. Thank you for inviting me, and now I will read the proclamation. Whereas there are over 8,790 Asian Pacific American residents in the city of Issaquah, which represents 23.2% of our population. And whereas we acknowledge the contribution of Asian Pacific Americans to our local arts, education, sciences, and to our economic and social and democratic institutions. And whereas Issaquah celebrates Asian Pacific Americans' embedded history to recognize and honor individuals, families, and businesses. And whereas we admit the past hardship and continued inequality for Asian and Pacific Americans and strive to foster inclusion to ensure all people have an equal opportunity. And whereas we commit to embracing diversity by paying tribute to Asian American and Pacific heritage through education, acknowledgement, and celebration within our community. And whereas we must continue to take a proactive stance that seeks solutions to address discrimination and disparity. And whereas we come together as a community in a spirit of unity to celebrate the invaluable contributions that enrich our city with Asian Pacific heritage. Now, therefore, I, Mary Lou Polly, the Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do hereby proclaim May 2021 to be Asian Pacific American Heritage Month in the City of Issaquah, and I strongly encourage all residents to join in our special observance. Thank you very much for having me here this evening and allowing me to deliver the proclamation. Very excited.
Thank you very much, Mayor Polly. Once again, we so appreciate having you here. So next, it's my honor to begin introducing you, our panelists, and begin our event tonight. And with that, I will start with Darpan Marwan. Welcome, Darpan. It's such an honor to have you here tonight. I'm gonna read a few words from you, and I'm gonna let you also introduce yourself. You shared with us that you've been in the United States for the last 20 years, and you've been in the beautiful Pacific Northwest and called it home since 2004. And would love to just hear more about your life here. So I'm gonna pause. So would love to welcome and let you introduce yourself as well.
Namaste, everyone, and hello. This is Darpan. I was born and raised in Delhi, India. So I came from India 20 years back. That's my story. And from then, we have called US as our home. And of course, Issaquah is the city which we can't ever leave. We are here and we are proud residents of Issaquah. Professionally, I'm working for a nonprofit organization called Friends of Issaquah State Park, and I am a big volunteer of the community. I have been always volunteering from the time I'm here. I have been as a diversity director with the PTSA for 2 years, and I've been involved with the India Cultural Club too. So, and I love my community and always here to help.
Thank you. So I have a first question for you. You mentioned you grew up in Delhi, India. Tell us a little bit about the city you grew up in and what is unique and interesting about Delhi and among other cities in India. What is one thing that you miss about the city that is maybe not available here?
So Delhi actually rhymes with Dil, the heart. Dil means heart in English. And it means I'm really close to my heart. So I really miss Delhi whenever I say the Delhi word, actually. Delhi can be compared with Washington, D.C. Because it has got all the government offices there, the forts, the monuments, and you can't actually resist the scrumptious street food of Delhi, which I really miss. And of course, the bargain bazaars, which comes from 1800s. I should say you should always, if you visit Delhi, you should always go to this historical monuments and the forts, the Lal Killa, and they're all from the British Empire, the Connaught Place. And one thing which I miss about Delhi is my extended family, of course, the food, the shopping. So whenever I visit India, I have a big list of authentic jewelry, clothes, and footwear. So next time I visit India, you can give me your list.
That's awesome. I would love to try some of that amazing food originally from there. So yeah, thank you. Next, I would love to introduce you to Zoe. And I was trying to learn earlier this week from Zoe on how to best pronounce her name. And she told me a very interesting story about her name. And I think as in many languages, sometimes if you're not careful, if in just one tiny difference can make a huge, one tiny change in the way you pronounce a word can make a big difference in the meaning of the word. And so with that risk, I don't feel comfortable taking the risk in pronouncing your name. I would love to invite you to tell us exactly how it's pronounced because it's the correct way. But I was so honored to meet Zoe, and she teaches Chinese at Skyline High School. She's been there for about 7 years, and she's been a teacher for about 20. She also advises the Chinese Club. She's the District World Language Co-Lead and group member of the district, educator of color. She has a passion for assisting other teachers and students. She's an officer of Washington Association for Language Teaching, the founder of Washington Association of American and Chinese Education, and the board member of the National Chinese Language Teachers Association. She received the award of the Washington World Language Teacher of the Year in 2018. And so as an immigrant, Zoe devotes herself to promoting an inclusive, multicultural, and multilingual community. She and her students celebrate diversity in and beyond the classroom by organizing and volunteering for many cultural events, including the Chinese Expo, the Why Learn Chinese competition, and the Issaquah Salmon Days. So thank you for all your service. Zoe, would love to hear a few words from you. I think that's
all right. Okay. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Zoe Zhang, and my Chinese name is Ling O. Hello, ni hao. I'm honored to be on this panel and thanks for inviting me. I was born and raised in Shanghai. I'm not sure if you know Shanghai, a city of 24 million people located in the middle of China's east coast. So in 2008, I moved to the United States, and Issaquah was the first city where I lived and bought my first house. Yeah, I have lived here in Issaquah for 8 incredible years. And by the way, 8 is a lucky number in Chinese culture. And then I moved to a neighborhood, actually not too far away. Since there are new school boundaries, my daughter will probably still attend school in Issaquah. So Shanghai was my first hometown, and now Issaquah is my second hometown. I'm so excited that Issaquah is celebrating the Asian Pacific Heritage Month for the first time, and I can be part of this wonderful event. Thank you.
I'm so glad that you're with us, Zoe. It's such a pleasure having you. And so, you know, you've been teaching Chinese for nearly 20 years. We are curious, what has been the most surprising for you about the educational system in the United States compared to the educational system in China? What is one tradition or an interesting fact that children in schools in China have that students in the United States do not experience?
There are many differences, big and small, between the two education systems. I still remember that we didn't realize we should drop off supply list materials in the classroom when we sent our first daughter to kindergarten in Issaquah. Because in China, elementary kids, they use their own stationery. So it was a shock and kind of embarrassing. But since more and more immigrant families were moving to this area, my district, Issaquah School District, established a family partnership team in 2015 to assist new families, especially families of our culturally and linguistically diverse community. So for families new to district, there are numerous resources available in different languages, which help them to better understand and navigate the school system. And coming back to the most significant differences between the education systems, I would say is the college admission process. So American students take the SAT or ACT, then apply to colleges. The college admissions process also considers other factors like I would say activities out of school, leadership skills, talents, and personality. Chinese students only take the college entrance exam only once a year. So the score on the entrance exam will determine which university a Chinese student may enter. So this difference affects what and how they study in high school, middle school, and even as early as in elementary school. So I would also like to briefly share a tradition that school children in China practice. Chinese students do acupressure eye exercises. They're based on traditional Chinese medicine principles and have been carried out by school children in China for decades. And I thought to help stay off nearsightedness. I know there is still some controversy about efficacy about that, but personally, I would say at the very least, it is a great break from the rigors of the classroom and helps reduce stress and frustration. So I would say all in all, education is cultural, and the different education systems highlight different societies' culture. I would say both education systems have room for improvement, but we agree education is to develop, I would say, global citizens, and I'm looking forward to more education delegations and student exchange programs between these two countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. It's also interesting and powerful to learn how these different cultures experience things differently. And I can certainly relate from someone who grew up in a different country. I'm originally from Romania. When I first came and started learning about the educational system and learning about the school supplies, that was a surprise for me as well. And also interesting, as you mentioned about the acupuncture and because I don't know if this is a fact, this is just an observation. As I moved to the United States, I felt like every child has glasses and wears glasses, whereas in our countries that was not the case, and I always wondered like why and if there's anything more beyond. So I would love to perhaps at some point learn more about how different cultures see that. But next I'm gonna move and we'll check back in with the other panelists, but I would love next to introduce to you Terry. Welcome, Terry. It's so great to have you with us. And so we learned that Terry was born and raised in Thailand. So we do a cultural journey where you move from India to China, and next we are in Thailand. You moved into the United States in 2001, and part of your family is in California, and then you also moved to Dallas, and you got your master's degree at the University Tech of Dallas, and got a job with T-Mobile in Bellevue in 2003. And here's a good question from you. You say, can you guess what was my first city to live when I came to Seattle? And thank you. I'm glad that is Issaquah. Welcome. So you've been with T-Mobile for 18 years now, and you're the senior manager leading engineering and analytics and strategy organization. It's such an honor to have you. Thank you. You also have about 14 years experience in real estate as a broker and home development. And then you are a business owner at Khao-San Thai Cuisine for about 9 years, partnering with Pui. And Pui was going to be here with us tonight. We learned that is recovering from the second dose of the vaccine and hopefully feeling a little bit better. So Terry, thank you for being here. Would love to hear, please say a few words about yourself.
All right, backup speaker is here. This is Terry. So I'm actually here in Seattle since 2003. So it's been 18 years here, and I love it here. I can say that half of my life is already in US. That's pretty much half in Thailand, Bangkok, and then another half is here. And so I hear quite a lot. And when I moved here into Seattle, the first city, like you mentioned earlier, right, is Issaquah. And then after I settled down, I moved it closer to my office in Bellevue. So I live in Eastgate now. And then when I want to own the business and start doing something on the restaurant or retail side, then I pick to the Issaquah as my choice. Right? So I have the frozen yogurt shop in Issaquah downtown. And then after 4 or 5 years, then we decide to convert that to the Thai restaurant. So, yeah.
Welcome again. So great to have you. As you were hearing the conversation with our previous panelists, anything in Thailand that you can share about the educational system that is different, or any surprises that you've seen?
I would say that in Thailand is quite disciplined. I would say that we have to wear a uniform, we have to like have our own stationery and all the stuff. So like what Zoe mentioned earlier, right? So I think those are the things that also in Thailand, they have like a pretty much a good process that everyone have to follow the same way. I would say that when I study in US, when I move it over here, I see a lot of different in terms of freedom, the way of thinking, the way of the process. You can have more diversity in the way of the idea, opinions, a lot more people is more vocal. So in Thailand, if you're not really like extrovert type of the student, you're not gonna raise your hand and answer something, right? You kind of observe and a little bit afraid to saying something in front of the class. But when you're here in US, I mean, everyone vocal about like, hey, I want to say something. I want to voice my opinion. I want to saying that, oh, I know this, and I think that you should think about this, right? So I think that's the difference that I see in the education.
Thank you so much. That's great to hear. And I'm gonna also, I know you mentioned that you're a business owner. And I saw Mayor Polly's comment that the restaurant Khaosan is amazing. Tell us a little bit, how did you decide to become a business owner? How was that adventure for you?
So my adventure, most of my career, I've been working in the corporate industry, and then I just continue doing that as today. But I think about 9 years ago when I start thinking about, should I explore a different venue, right? Because I think I kind of have three types of venue. One is the corporate in T-Mobile. The second one is I'm also the broker for the real estate. So I see how Issaquah changed since 14, 15 years ago until kind of now. There's a lot of growth that we see in the city. And then when I start make a decision to do the business, I want to use that as the experience to starting make my own decision, right? Because in the corporate world, you still can go back to your boss and go back to your superior and say, hey, is it a good idea to do things, right? If I gonna make this decision, is it gonna be good to do? But when you own your own business, then you might not have a lot of people to go back and say, hey, is that a good idea? Right? So I think that I want to learn those experience and then starting on my own business. Right? So we partnered this with Pui. We opened the first thing together as a frozen yogurt and chocolate store. We own the Youth World and the Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory for about 4 or 5 years. So I think one thing that I learned from there is more, I like to create a job for a local, mostly like the student and the new grad, that they can actually working on that environment is easy, get into the first job. And then when we make a decision at the turning point that when we get another partner that they are the chef family, they want to open a Thai restaurant, then we make a decision together to convert that to the Thai restaurant. And I hopefully that most of you get a chance to try it out and enjoy the Thai food over there.
That's certainly, it's a great idea. Thank you so much. Before we go to our next panelist, I would just love to notice some notes in the chat box and just let everyone know, and again, thank our attendees. Those who are in attendance, you cannot turn your cameras on. This is so we can feature our panelists. Certainly when towards the end, we will hopefully have some time for questions and answers. And if you're interested at that time, we will ask you to raise your virtual hand and we can then bring you up as a panelist to turn on your camera. Meanwhile, if you have questions for our panelists as you need them, please feel free to ask them in the chat box or in the question and answer section, and Marisol and Hannah will be able to assist as we go to that section. So for now, I'm gonna then next go and introduce our last panelist, definitely last but not least at all. It's such an honor to have you here, Michael. Welcome. I know Michael because we've been working in human services together with Chinese Information and Service Center for quite a few years. And so thank you again for being here tonight. Michael Idi is the Executive Director of Chinese Information and Service Center, CISC, which is a nonprofit organization here in King County that supports immigrants and their families by creating opportunities for them to succeed while honoring their heritage. Michael has a broad range of experience working in nonprofit organizations and government, where he focused on advocacy, public policy, and civic engagement. including being the executive director of the Washington State Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs. Michael holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from George Washington University. And with that, welcome, Michael. Please say a few words.
Well, thank you, Monica, and everybody, and Mayor. We really appreciate the proclamation, and it's been great to work with the City of Issaquah and all the Human Services team members.
Great, thank you. Michael, do you mind telling us about your family history and origin, and then how you became executive director of CISC? And then tell us a little bit more about the work that CISC does.
Well, I'm a second generation Washingtonian. My family parents are actually from Thailand, and my grandparents are from China. And I grew up in a neighboring city in Redmond, and was really inspired by my mom's interest in political science. So that's why I headed out east to go to George Washington, but decided to get a business degree anyway. And I became executive director of CISC through my experience working in the nonprofit sector. I advocated for education funding and policies for several nonprofits, and had a chance to work for the Washington State Legislature in Olympia, and also just previously working with the governor with the State Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs. So it's been really exciting to work in civic engagement, advocacy, public policy, and of course the nonprofit world.
Thank you. I love the wide representation we have on the panel tonight, from business and technology to nonprofit to community and environment, teaching. It's just such a big honor. I cannot say enough to have you all here with us tonight. So we have a few other questions that we would love to hear from you before we open it to questions from our audience. So with that, I'm going to go back to you, Darpan. We would love to hear more about your culture and your heritage. And if you don't mind telling us a little bit about maybe one important Indian tradition or Indian cultural heritage that you would want to pass down to your son, that maybe you feel comfortable sharing with us tonight.
Actually, I want my son to embrace the cultural diversity and take pride in his own culture. So the only way our kids will learn when they know how to respect their own culture, and they will pass it to the next generation. But we do celebrate the festivals of India, but we do celebrate the festivals of different culture. We do celebrate Diwali, Festival of Lights, but equivalently, we do celebrate Christmas. So I see all the cultures as one, and because it's very important to know that humanity is the first culture which you should respect. And that's what I'm going to teach my son. But yes, do always respect from where you came, and do always respect the roots of where you grew up. So that's the thing I'm going to pass to my son.
Beautifully said. Thank you, Darpan. How was for you your transition to the United States and your transition to Issaquah specifically? Like, was there anything surprising, or what was surprising when you first moved here?
So I moved here back in 2001. And I still remember it was Christmas Day. I landed on San Francisco International Airport. And I was really excited because back in India on Christmas Day, it's like everyone is out, the restaurants are buzzing, everyone is on the street, the malls are all filled. So I was like really surprised to see nothing is open. And the first meal which I ate that day was a Subway sandwich, because that was the only place which was open. So that was a big surprise for me. And talking about the difference, like what I feel from there is here, I have been grown, my parents are doctors, and else also, like domestic help is a big thing in India. So to do everything DIY and to learn the norms here was a big cultural surprise, and it took me time to adjust, frankly speaking. But yeah, so, and we moved here in Issaquah in 2004. So it's been around 17 years, 16 years. So yeah, and we have called Issaquah as our home, and we love being here. We love shopping here, eating Thai food here. And I love the diversity. I've seen Issaquah growing, actually. I've seen there was nothing here when we came, and we were actually a bit hesitant to take a home here. Everything was developing, but we were hopeful that everything will be like, you know, in a good place one day, and it is. So there are so many people of different culture, which we love, and I love the diversity, and thank you for doing this, and knowing us, like how important people think city of Issaquah thinks that diversity is important for us as a people. And in these time of fear, like, you know, it's very important for us to be one and do something for the community. So thank you again.
Thank you, just the same. I would love to also hear from you, Terry, if what was surprising for you when you moved to the United States and transitioned.
I think on top of my head, I just have the comment when that one actually talked earlier. I still remember the first word of one of my friend that toured me the Issaquah on my first day, and she actually helped driving through the Issaquah downtown. And then I think the comment that she made when introduced me to town, saying, "Hey, we're gonna pass the downtown now. Don't blink. If you blink, it's already done." So I'm like, okay. That's the first city that I'm land here, right? But I enjoy that quite a lot because I like more quiet and more scenery for the tree and all the stuff. That's why I love Seattle. Compared to back in the day, like when I was in Bangkok in Thailand, you only have building over there, right? A lot of traffic and a lot of people. So that's a transition that I'm here in Seattle. But when I came here from Thailand to US, I pretty much come here for the study. So after I finished my bachelor in Thailand, and I moved it here, trying to get the master degree accepted for my degree, right? So and then I got accepted to the UT Dallas. So I have to move to Texas. The transition is not that bad. Texas is pretty hot over there compared to here. And the temperature is very similar to Thailand. But I do like gray, cloud, rain. This is where I love. If I love hot, probably back to Thailand already, but I'm not. So those are the transition that when I come here to Seattle.
Thank you. Zoe, how similar for you as well. How did you become engaged with the community when you first arrived, and how easy or difficult was that process, or any barriers that you found as you were trying to engage with the community?
Can you speak on that?
It was a critical place for me to become engaged in the community. They provided many free events and classes where I found information and services and connected socially with others. My understanding is they need volunteers and partnerships to offer more various resources like that. Immigrants are usually concerned about education needs, healthcare access, personal finance management needs, social engagement, work readiness, and employment needs. So I hope more individuals and organizations will be interested in helping them. On the other hand, I would also encourage immigrants to volunteer in return, as volunteer is an excellent way to become engaged in their new community. And I will say it was hard to say the process was hard or was easy or difficult. It's it's always not easy to step out your comfort zone and adjust to a new environment. So change begins at the end of your comfort zone with the kindness and patience around immigrants and those who are new to our community. The change can be positive. I would say language is still a barrier. I hope there will be more ESL lessons, not only for beginners, but also for advanced learners. And increasing the awareness of cross-cultural competence is also a critical step in helping immigrants fitting into this new community. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good segue to my next question for Michael. Michael, from your experience with your organization and in the community, what opportunities are there for Chinese or other Asian community members to celebrate and preserve their heritage, and how can they be more involved in the community, and what can we do as a community to support that preservation?
Yeah, well, CISC, is a good example of that involvement. In 1972, college students saw a need in Seattle's Chinatown International District, saw many of the elders walking around and not being able to access benefits to maintain and improve their quality of life. And so by thinking about how to create a nonprofit, they basically put up a table on the sidewalk and registered with the Secretary of State and formed an organization. So here we are nearly 50 years later, and it's been working to provide support to immigrants around Issaquah and other cities in the east side and also throughout King County. We have programs that honor the heritage of immigrants from preschool, after school, early learning, ESL naturalization, healthcare navigation, and a lot of programs for older adults to improve and maintain their quality of life. And on the east side, we have a new program called the Family Resource Support Program, which is supported by Issaquah. And then in other parts of the area, we have a Russian Senior Day program, and also Kaleidoscope Play and Learn, which is a great way for caregivers and family members and parents to bring their kids together. Usually it's at a library, but of course now it's virtual. So those are ways to get to know your neighbors and connect with one another and talk about people's backgrounds, histories, and cultures. And we're very fortunate in our region to have terrific assets that celebrate the Asian American, Chinese, and other heritage around the world. So we have the Wing Luke Museum, which is based in the Chinatown International District, and then Asia Pacific Cultural Center in Tacoma. Those are two among many that I'll highlight that is going to be a great resource and a place to learn about people's history and background. And also in the month of May, at the beginning of the first Sunday of May, at the Seattle Center is the API Heritage Month celebration. As part of the Festal series that Seattle Center has throughout the year, we had a great virtual celebration earlier this month, and next year hopefully it'll be in person. And I think that also another really key way to preserve heritage is to support the sharing of heritage through storytelling, writing, music, movies, arts, and culture, but also thinking about our education system. Because when I was growing up, Redmond was not as diverse as it is today. And going through the Lake Washington School District, I didn't often see or learn about histories that really reflected the student body. So it is important to think about how we can make sure that textbooks and curriculum and lesson planning reflects the diversity of our region's population, especially where I believe that 50% of the kids in our K-12 system in Puget Sound are now kids of color. So it's really important to learn about history and thinking about Chinese history. The Chinese Exclusion Act that passed in 1882 was the first law passed by Congress that singled out a specific race or ethnicity. And it was in place until 1943, which prevented many people of Chinese heritage to arrive in the U.S. And that law also, around that time in the 1880s, it sparked a lot of violence that impacted Tacoma and Seattle and other cities throughout the West Coast. And then thinking about another big landmark decision was the United States versus Wong Kim Ark. This was in 1898. And that decision by the Supreme Court helped to lay the groundwork for birthright citizenship. So major histories that, I did not learn any of this stuff in school. And so I hope today there's at least something in the school's curriculum and textbooks about that. Another really important story that I want to share is the story of the Four Amigos, or the Gang of Four. Bernie White Bear, from the Native American, Bob Santos, who's Filipino and Asian American, and Roberto Maestas, Latino, and Larry Gossett, who's African American. So Larry Gossett, former King County Council member, but those four people were terrific friends. But through the decades during the Civil Rights Movement, they fought for social justice and racial equity, and they helped to establish key organizations, pillars in their communities to advance and improve their neighborhoods. So with Bernie White Bear, with its United Indians of All Tribes Foundation, Bob Santos with Interim Community Development Association, Roberto Maestas with El Centro de la Raza, and Larry Gossett formed an organization that's now called Bird Bar Place in the Central District in Seattle. So it's a tradition of people working together across cultures and racial communities together in unity, and it's just so important to think about that tradition we have here in the Puget Sound area. And one more thing too, there is a book too. If you do look up, there's a book called Gang of Four, so you can learn a lot about it. And then another book that Bob Santos wrote was called Humbaus, Not Hot Dogs. And a story about how community civil rights leaders and activists were pushing back for the development of the kingdom, which was before CenturyLink. So that, or actually, sorry, Lumenfield. And so, yeah, that was there for the community to be able to advocate for resources and funding to support the Chinatown International District.
Oh, thank you so much. Please feel free if you would like to share the resource and the books in the chat for everyone. Definitely, we would love to get that from you. And I know that you and your organization have been involved a lot in advocacy and supporting the Chinese communities, and not just the Chinese communities, but the immigrant communities in Seattle and on the East Side. Can you tell us, Michael, a little bit also more about the anti-hate and anti-bias work that you're involved in at CISC, and if you have any facts or data that you would like to share with us, or anything the more recent history also?
Sure. Well, Asian American communities have been enduring rising incidents of racism and hate incidents and crimes since the beginning of last year. And a group called Stop AAPI Hate has recorded more than 6,600 incidents nationwide since March of last year. So around that time in King County, several organizations, including CISC, we worked together with King County's Office of Equity and Social Justice to create a coalition against hate and bias. And it's community-led. It's a way for folks in the community to reach out to any of the members of this coalition to report any incidents that they have experienced. And so far, we've received over 450 reports in King County. For CISC, our team of bilingual staff who speak Cantonese, Mandarin, Russian, Vietnamese, and Spanish, we have collected 197 reports since the middle of last year. And about a third of those reports are verbal threats. And then about 10% are physical threats or intimidation. And then looking at the national data, a lot of our data is pretty similar. The majority of the reports that we were receiving are coming from women, And the incidents are occurring in public spaces like sidewalks, public transportation, businesses, parks, at schools, and online. And the reports are, we're seeing them in Seattle and also on the east side. So we do have, telephone lines that are dedicated for each language group where anybody can report anonymously to CISC, and we will help provide case management and resources and help support community members who are experiencing hate and bias around our region.
Thank you very much, Michael. And towards the end, we have a list of resources that you and your teams shared with us that we would like to share with the rest of those who are here tonight. Thank you for that. I'm gonna move next. I would love to ask similar, if is there perhaps a common misperception that others people have about your culture and the challenge that you have faced culturally, and what could we do as a community to be more welcoming and inclusive?
So I think the misconception which people have is culturally, I don't know, but I can just say all Indian foods are not spicy. So that is one of the misconception I think people have. They are flavorful, you can say, but not spicy. So there goes the misconception. And also, I think the real India is like the media just, constantly portrays that India is a country of chaos and it's not that clean. And so the travelers to the country often expect to see the frugal life of the local people, but that's only half true, I guess. They seem to unmindful of the reality that the vibrant cities of India have high-end accommodation, fine dining, nightlife, metros and malls, and so it's a developing country. So people, when they, and of course the population, like in China, India also has a lot of population. So, so that's the reality. But the misconception is it's not that chaotic, or it's coming up to be much better, and it is much better. Also, as a country, I should say, like, India is not a poor country too, which is also a misconception people have. There are a lot of billionaires. I don't know the exact number, but yeah, the survey was done. And so, yeah, it's like a mixture of people there. So the misconception of India is the truth is it's a developing country, and it's like people should compare how developed US took time to develop, and that's how I think China, India, all the Asian countries are taking time to develop. So yeah, so it's a developing country.
Thank you, Darpan. It's good to be, the more we learn from one another, to be aware of differences and celebrate those differences, and just be mindful, because sometimes small things that we say can make a big difference in a positive way, or often, as we see and we heard from Michael and we know, can make a big difference in a very negative and sad way. So thank you. Zoe, how about you? Can you tell us perhaps maybe a question that you hope to never be asked again, or maybe a question that you wish people did ask you?
I don't remember a specific question, but I don't want to be asked racial stereotype questions. So I am Chinese, but no, I'm not good at math. I'm the person who assumes the more I buy, the lower unit price I should get. I wasn't aware of the tricks some retailers play until my friend told me, actually, buying a separate item was cheaper than purchase the bundle. I'm a Chinese, yes, I like tea. And I hold the tea ceremonies with my students in the classroom and advocate the tea culture at community events. But however, you will also see me in the local Starbucks, if not twice, at least once a day. So yeah, no stereotype questions. As a world language teacher, I am proud to offer my students the opportunity to experience the diversity of the world around them. My students are invited to embrace different viewpoints and challenge stereotypes. We celebrate the big C. We call the big C the tip of the cultural iceberg, like Chinese Kung Fu, dumplings, but we also break through the stereotypes and dive into the deep water and explore things such as the features of Chinese daily life and the Chinese popular culture. That's my answer.
Thank you, Zoe. Definitely good. Yeah, a good reminder. We often have the stereotypical assumptions that we make, and it's good for us to be aware that generalizations often will hurt and not help for sure. Terry, what stereotypes have you experienced, and what is one thing that you wish people did not assume, and what can you do to do better?
I'm trying to think about the funny one. So I think the first one that I have is when they know that I'm coming from Thailand, they might start thinking about Thailand is Taiwan. I think that that's the one common one, but maybe because of I might look more Chinese, and I'm 100% Chinese, by the way. So I only learn like a third generation now. I only learn Chinese to survive in Chinatown, to order food. But normally my parent can speak Chinese and change the topic to speak in Chinese when they want to talk about me. So they don't teach me Chinese. So but that's the encryption that normally they do. But the other one that I kind of see as a misperception is like Hui used to tell me that her friend used to ask that, are you still travel by elephant? Back in Thailand, right? So I think that's kind of like where I think it's kind of funny, but it's kind of odd in a way. But those are the two things that I can think of at this time.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, kind of funny, kind of not. Right. Well, thank you. I have so many questions I would love to ask all of you, and I'm also keeping an eye on the clock, and I'm keeping an eye on the chat. I see that our guests are also excited to ask a few questions from you. So if that's okay with you, I would love to pause my questions for a little bit and hear from some of our attendees. Would that be okay with you? So Marisol and Hannah, if you don't mind helping me out, I don't know who's first. I see a list of questions there, or if there are others that we should bring up. I see also Lucrecia perhaps has a question, so I can invite, perhaps I can start with Lucrecia. She has a question, and then you can help me, Marisol, with who's next in the chat. Give me just a moment. Lucrecia, I will bring you up so you can turn on your camera and ask a question. You should be able to unmute now and ask a question.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening and for opening up this session for community members to join you. I actually do not have a question. I was trying to learn what all the different buttons are because I'm on the phone. And so I do not have a question, but I did want to express just how grateful I am for all of the information that each of you are sharing from different aspects of how you contribute to the community, whether you are teaching, you are entrepreneurs, and or running nonprofits. I loved the story that Mr. Is it Itti? Is that correct? Yes, that Mr. Itti shared about the Four Amigos. That really spoke to me because I truly believe in the importance of cross-cultural collaboration. I myself am an immigrant from Guatemala, as Marisol, Hannah, and Monica know. And I truly do believe that when we reach out to one another and create those coalitions, we break down barriers, fears, misconceptions, and anything that could limit us from being, the city of Issaquah that can be. So that is basically all that I would like to add. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Lucrecia. I just saw a question mark behind your name. I brought you up. Next, I see a question from Elizabeth. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Elizabeth says, I would like to ask the women what they noticed about the differences in cultural expectations for women here as contrasted with their home culture. So, Zoe, if you would like to try to answer, and then Darpan.
Oh, I will say the biggest difference is we don't change our last name after marriage. So that's why my daughter's teachers sometimes they're confused because my daughter's last name is Cui, but my last name is Jiang. So, but I am her mother. we're from the same family. Yeah, I would say this is one difference. And I will say in China, women go to work, so we seldom see we say like a housewife. So that's a difference. But I'm not saying like which is better, which is I will say this is personal choice. But you will see more working moms in China, and we celebrate the National Women's Day because I will say like now here we also celebrate. So this is something changing. So I'm very excited about this change. All right, so I'll give this back to you.
Thank you. Darpan, would you like to go next?
If you compare India working women and here working women, I think it's quite similar. In India also, I think our generation women are all working. Even my mom, my in-laws, all are working women. So I have always seen in my family, rather when I came to US, I could not work for around 10 years actually, because I had the visa constraint. So that was a big shock for me to stay at home. And as said, like I think in Asia as such, I think we have more working women, I think if you compare from US.
Thank you, Darpan. And actually, I love the question, and I would love to extend it to see if there are cultural differences for men also in Thailand or China compared to the United States. So I would love to hear from you, Terry, and then Michael.
You mean from the man standpoint about the woman, or the standpoint for the man to man?
Let's keep it to man for now. How's that? That's a great clarification, though.
Yeah, just want to make sure. I have to think for a second. Maybe Michael, you can go first.
Well, I think I'll comment in terms of just kind of like a general, just the sense about Asian Americans being, not as active in terms of advocacy. And I think it really is important. Like there's so many examples of Asian American leaders, elected officials, who are active in all parts of society, especially in government. And just thinking about, if anybody, in the audience, is thinking about, how to make the community, more welcoming and inclusive, right? We all have to do something to make the community better, right? And there's so many ways to go about it, but thinking about issues, whether it's education or housing, healthcare, social services, I think we all care about many or all of those issues. There are organizations that advocate for those issues. So if someone is trying to wonder about how do we change something, right? If you want to make education funding more ample and more well-funded, or try to focus on preschool and early learning opportunities, or making sure that everybody has an equitable opportunity to get healthcare, affordable healthcare. There are organizations out there that will help navigate people through the advocacy process, understanding policies, understanding funding. It's about our own personal stories, right? If we care about mental health, or we have somebody that is really trying to improve the business climate, we all have our personal stories to share that we can go in front of city councils, we can go to the state legislature, the county council, and really work to advance and improve the community. And all of us have play an important role, right? And especially when we think about the civil rights movement, that people had to walk in the streets, they had to go to the chambers and advocate for policy changes to help us get to where we are today. So it's really important for us to continue that tradition and think about the next barrier to break, right?
I do see that the difference is the men in US is more independent compared to back in Thailand. I would say that majority of the people here, most of the system that I'm seeing in terms of like what Michael just mentioned, right? All the healthcare or all the benefit and all the stuff. I mean, it built in the way that you can be independent on your own, financially independent, and you also can support your family. But compared back to Thailand in the same age range, or maybe even like a new grad, most of the time I do see that they still need to rely on someone, right? Like either rely back to their own family or something like that. Even they get the job, they're still living with their parents. So that's kind of like a culture that I'm seeing differently. And I think that it's set up in the way that the US get to send people to be more independent to financial freedom more than back in the Thailand.
Thank you. That's so very interesting to hear that, because I know, and I always wondered if it's a stereotype or if it's a cultural choice, but we often hear that there are multiple generations in some cultures who live in the same household, and perhaps it's not always by choice. It's just perhaps just not having the financial independence, right? But again, it might be.
It's also depend on the type of the expense too, right? So like for me, I can give you example. If you want to eat in Thailand, you probably like 3-4 times cheaper, right? You can eat like a king over there, a king or queen. But when you want to either buy the house or buying a car, the house price in Bangkok is pretty much the same in Seattle here. It is just crazy. Right? And then for the price of the car, you have to pay 3 times higher. So for you to get the job that pay less than US and afford all that, then it's going to be a challenging over there, right? So that's why they might have to still stay with the parent or family and rely on someone so to reduce their expense. So those are the things that is a different culture over there.
Thank you. Darpan and Zoe, is it similar? Can you tell us a little bit about what Terry was just noting with the different multiple generations and the independence for someone who's young being able to be away from their parents, or what's your experience in your culture?
So I was raised by my grandma because my parents were both working. So joint family is very common in India, but now I think the things are changing, of course, because this generation is earning much better than what the previous generation used to. So the nuclear families are coming up in India, but still the joint family concept is still there, as as in all Asian countries. I think it's a culture to financially support sometimes your parents, and I think that's main motto if they are living with their parents, old parents, to take care of them and to support them financially. So but I can see India changing, I should say. It's like people like the young generation, because they have started earning much better. They want to be nuclear, maybe near to their parents, but in separate apartments, and want to be more independent. So that's the change I've seen in this generation.
Thank you.
All right, I echo what Daphne said. I'll say it is very normal for us to see like joint families in China, but there is new trend. Young generation would like to live separately with their parents or grandparents. But I will say the idea situation for us is we can live separately, but not too far away, so still close enough so we can have dinner together. So parents can still cook for us, for the young generation. Then we can say bye-bye, we can go home and watch TV. So, but I will say the housing prices are very high in China, especially in big cities. So yeah, so young generations still need financially support from parents or grandparents. So usually parents will pay the down payment for their kids for housing. Yeah.
And I would also like to add one more thing, which is like, I think quite different. Especially, I don't know, I think it's an Asian thingy, but we like to save for our kid. Even for the college, we want to give money for the college prize. Like we don't want our kids to do and earn, and so I think it's a trend which we follow. I never did any work for my college fees, and that's what I think my son is going to do, because we're going to save. So I think that's in our blood. Maybe, I don't know. It's right or wrong, no idea, but that's, I think, the trend.
Yeah, I do see that too. I agree with you. A lot of like Asian family that I know, they do save up for their kid until the college. That's what I see.
Oh, it's so beautiful to learn about what different cultures experience. And I know that tonight we just asked, we just went here and there and asked a few questions. As I shared earlier at the beginning, and as we started organizing this event, we struggled with the balance, because we, on one end, we felt like, oh, we so want to make it about all celebration and bringing out the beautiful and rich cultures that each country in Asia has. And then on the other end, it felt like we can't just do that without being calling out and acknowledging the pain and loss that we have in the community. And so as we are getting to a close end, I see there's another question in the chat that I'm gonna go there soon, but would love to hear from each of you, class, if there's anything else, if you have just a few minutes that you would love to share about your culture, that is, if a visitor would love to go to your country, what are some things that you would like to share? And then, so that's one. And then my last question would be what can we do as a community in Issaquah to make sure that we are more welcoming and inclusive to our communities? I don't know if anyone would like to go first. If please feel free to jump in.
I can go first. I think for Thailand, for anyone want to visit, We have great food. We have the very good sightseeing. And good culture, good people. We also talking about like Thailand is a land of smile. A lot of people keep smiling over there. So if you're gonna visit Thailand, I would recommend at least maybe a week and a half or two. So you can spend half of the time in Bangkok, enjoy the city, and then another half, maybe at least 4 days that you can go to the beach. It's really beautiful over there. Go to the south side of the Thailand and just go enjoy the beach and scenery over there. So that for my first question on Thailand. I think the second question is what can we do more on the community in Issaquah? I think that Issaquah did great. I mean, so far I've been to many cities in the US. I think I travel more than half the country already with my work. I still enjoy Seattle the most, and I especially love the East Side. That's why I spend most of my time in both Bellevue and Issaquah. Issaquah, when I see, it's already a lot of diversify, and I already feel welcome in terms of the business or live there, right? So the business, I mean, the local community is very tight, right? Like they help each other even through the pandemic. We opened the Thai restaurant just about 6 months or almost 9 months before the pandemic hit. I thought that we might not survive at that point, but Issaquah has been helping us and loving us quite a lot, and I think that we can survive there, right? So that's why I think that Issaquah is very good. But the only thing that if I think that we can do more, maybe there's a little bit multiple pocket in Issaquah, right? Like we have exit 15 down to like 18 on the highland, so we have a different flavor of the type of the Issaquah, and it still feel a little bit isolated, right? Like the people in Talas, the people in Gilman, the people in Highland, so they have a different pocket of the Issaquah. So if we can be more united and work more together, I think that might make Issaquah much greater. So that's for me.
Thank you, Terry. Zoe, would you like to go next?
Oh, sure. I'm from Shanghai, so I have always wanted to bring my students to my hometown, Shanghai, to see the modern China. And of course, I mean, like China is so big, you have so many options. You can see the traditional Chinese culture. You can also see the modern China, like Shanghai. But one thing, just like other people always say, you need to try Chinese food because this is something I would say like food is the window to culture. So please, so get ready. So maybe you need to have diet first for one week, then you are ready. You can go to China. And for your second question, I will say my Chinese class Dragon Dance team has participated in the Issaquah 7 days parade before, and we also volunteered to teach lantern painting at an art booth. So my students, both my Chinese heritage students and the non-heritage students, were very excited. They were so proud. So I hope the community in Issaquah will hold more cultural events featuring diversity to make everyone feel welcomed and included. So this panel actually can serve as a great starting point. I'm looking forward to seeing more cultural events like an international food truck event, like evening event, with performances by singers and the dancers from different cultural backgrounds. And I believe my students will be excited to volunteer. So please consider it.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion and idea. And let's hope for next year to be able to meet in person, and maybe we can celebrate with food and music and art. That would be so wonderful. And so that's my wish and my dream for our next event. Thank you, Zoe, so much. Michael, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think, while it's been disheartening and alarming to hear about and see the rise in anti-Asian racism and hate incidents and crimes, we all have the ability to do something. And I recommend that people take bystander intervention training. There's an organization that Asian Americans Advancing Justice has supported called Holla Back. And I'll put the link in the chat. But the trainings are offered for free and they're available online. And I had a chance to take a training about a few weeks ago, and there was about like 3,000 people per webinar. So it's very high demand right now. But the trainings cover the history of anti-Asian racism and how racism and xenophobia impact Asian Americans today. And that people will learn strategies that they categorize in 5 areas called distract, delegate, document, delay, and direct. And those 5 strategies, all of them, or maybe one, could be used. And anybody who might find themselves a bystander, right, can intervene depending on how they, which strategy they want to use, whether it's on the bus or on the sidewalk or in a grocery store. So I highly encourage everyone to take the bystander intervention training, and it's free online. I think there are some trainings coming up in June.
Thank you, Michael. And I think with that, you answered one of the questions that was here in the chat that I received, because somebody was asking on what would you encourage bystanders to do when they see an immigrant or a person of Asian Pacific Islander heritage being disrespected or attacked. So I think that you answered that question, but then if you have something else to add, definitely would love to hear. So thank you. And so Darpan, what are your thoughts and suggestions and ideas?
I would actually really second Zoe about the idea about the food trucks and different events from different cultures. I always had that in my mind, and I shared also, I think previously in my meeting with Monica, that we should have an event. I remember in 2018, we did celebrate something, and even 2019, we had an African and Mexican event. So instead of having different cultural events, I think we can combine all the cultures together and have a grand event. It will be really good for the community because frankly speaking, I really didn't see much coming before 2015 or 2016, but after that, Issaquah has started doing events for the community to show diversity, and I'm really hoping to see more and to volunteer and be part of it.
Thank you. And I think you are referring, I'm guessing here you might be referring to the Welcoming Week event that we've been doing over the last few years. And actually, we just started preparing for that for this fall. So we would love to have you part of that. And hopefully we can plan for an in-person celebration, who knows, in the fall. But yes, that would be wonderful to continue to grow and expand our programs that welcome our communities. So thank you. Great ideas and suggestions. So I think I don't see other questions, and actually we are coming up here to an end. We only have a couple of minutes left. I just want to extend my sincere thanks again to you for taking the time and being here on the panel tonight. We so appreciate you. I also want to extend my thanks to those who attended tonight. I know it's usually evenings are not easy times. Everybody's busy, and so we appreciate that you took a chance and you came here to learn more. And what can we do as a community to be more inclusive and have these conversations as a community. Also want to thank, I noticed that we have a couple of council members attending. Thank you so much, Council President Hunt and Council Member DiMichele. We are so glad that you're here. And so with that, Hannah, if you have last closing comments, we would love to hear from you before we say goodnight.
Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for such a special event. This is, we hope for this to be the first of many, but turning it into in-person here, hopefully soon. I just want to acknowledge just the importance of our community and being inclusive, and our response to that is looking at allyship, which is rejecting discrimination and social injustice through action. An ally acknowledges oppression and actively commits to reducing their complicities and strengthening their own knowledge and awareness of oppression. An ally commits to taking on the struggles as their own. So I just implore this community and for us to all extend that inclusivity, and that we can promote that to our community, whether it's our small circles or larger circles that we get to be with. So thank you all for joining us tonight for this very special event. I really appreciate the panelists sharing their stories. I learned a lot, as I think everybody else did. And again, we hope to see everyone in this community very soon.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Thanks again for being here.